The whole thing doesn't jive. Like you don't emergency escape from an exploding NPC station in a pod. I mean, I suppose, but it at least explains, like, we've never had a really good explanation of how you became a capsuleer and what that actually was like, and how you what happened when you transitioned to being out, out. But again, like, it depends. Yeah, there is a flavor of that. Like the Inception MPE had it a lot worse. But I think that players understand that a tutorial is extra contrived.
A spot well chosen. This location's cosmic abnormalities will mask our warp signatures from detection.
Like by necessity. Yeah, I agree. I would really like to see a revamp or a replacement for missions, as in a secondary kind. But yes, it is a narrative story. I still like it more than the Inception MPE because it's also like, this is an event that could happen to any given capsuleer, as opposed to like the Drifter Hive event from the Inception MPE, which was kind of a pretty important thing.
Initiating scan of unidentified signal. Captain, hostiles inbound.
We have to defend those unarmed civilian transports. All ships equipped for combat, form up around me.
Yeah. Like, it should not be a matter of trying to avoid negative feedback, because there's always going to be somebody who's put out by any given change. The point is to listen to that feedback and process it for what it represents in the larger scale of things. And see when the player is simply seeing the forest for the trees. Because players often, like, human beings don't know what they want. This is a very true thing across the board. And so there's a point of interpretation between what the player thinks they need and what would actually make a good game experience. But them communicating what they're experiencing to the developers helps the developers refine down to what it is that they're intending the player to experience.
Target lock confirmed. Time.
That's it, Captain. Let them have it.
All I'm saying is that they can add a new mission system or a group of agents. They can add new content to take up missioning niche, but they also need to leave the existing agents. Well, in this scenario, you're not actually necessarily even fundamentally changing the actual mission itself, just the way it is delivered. Because all the text, basically, rather than textual posts in local and a giant block of text at the beginning, now it's presented in a much more, interesting way. But mechanically, the site could be exactly the same. Exactly. I want to accept a mission, and while I'm en route, Aura briefs me on it while I'm traveling to it. That's what I want. Honestly, you know what they should do? Oh shoot, I forgot F1. Or F1 doesn't work. Do you know, unironically, what they need to do after the MPE? Cosmos missions. Cosmos missions are the biggest bang for their buck. They're pretty broken right now. They're due for narrative experience. They're strongly related to the Precursor Crisis in every way. And they're broke AF, and everybody knows it. So if they just fixed Cosmos agents, that would, and made Cosmos missions more better, I think that would be the single best improvement to the PvE that they could do. We need fully voiced narrator, or I agree.
Marvelously done, Captain. Combat can be such a glorious experience, especially when you're winning. Another hostile ship incoming.
Well,
A cruiser this time.
those aren't two different things, though, Fonsui. Those are not two different issues.
To test your combat abilities.
Because your complaint is that this is not the way that normal Eve is. And so there are two ways of fixing it. There's changing the MPE and fixing the way that, or changing the way that Eve is. Yes. Clumsy Capsuleer. I think she calls you clumsy in the original one. On air channel. Okay.
What's up?
Just checking levels. Say something?
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Looks like we're good. How's it going, dude?
Good. We're not disagreeing. I was addressing in chat.
Right. But I think that's what they were coming out as.
He
Like,
made a comment about like money. He was like, "How much money do you think they have for this?" And I'm like,
Oh.
"Okay." Firstly, I'm discussing two things. One was I said that this story doesn't represent EVE Online gameplay that they should expect. Make the story different. So that's not money related, right? That's just like, don't do it this way, do it that way. I don't think that that's implying they should spend more money. So that's number one. Number two, 80% of their R&D is devoted to new player experience. So if money was needed, I think it's there.
right.
The second thing was you mentioned missions, someone else mentioned revamping missions, and I said, sure, revamp, like add a whole new missioning system, add whatever you want, like add new agents that, add new missions, add a new UI, add whatever, but like the missions that exist now in the ecosystem that they exist in with the agents and the standings and the rewards, like that system needs to remain in place for the people that like doing that content, and there's no reason to remove it because it doesn't get in the way of anything. So any new missioning content just has to be encapsulated separately from this is all. And I don't think that implies any greater expenditure of money either. So I'm not sure where the money comes in.
Well, I mean, yes, they've got, like, we know that they've got a massive amount of their resources going towards, new player experience and all that stuff.
Oh,
but,
so he's saying if I'm saying they should do it again, so they should spend more money. I don't care if they do it again or not. I'm commenting on what they did.
Right. Well, I think that by saying that this isn't close to Eve, I think that they're reading in that an implication that it should be done again to be more like Eve. But I actually think that, like, there's a balance to it, right? This smacks to me as the instanced PvE argument kind of again, right? Like, having a narrative story-driven PvE or MPE was a problem, and we learned a lesson from that. But that was also a 3-hour-long PvE, right? That was a total experience that set up something and then got people into that. This gets you through it pretty quickly and just scrapes over concepts. And so it reminds me of, like, the career agents. These replace the career agents effectively, which is a structured story. Sort of.
Vice President of Operations. Commander Ferris spoke highly of your courage under fire.
Does she have a new background now?
Since your ship was destroyed in a blaze of glory, Air would like to provide you with a new one.
But yeah, I think that
this speaks to a certain perspective that's important here. Like, I come at EVE Online
Oh, yeah,
from the
that's-
perspective of a game designer. Like, I
Right.
don't come at it from the perspective of a player. I'm not lobbying for a specific play style or this or that. Like, I'm trying to look at this holistically. I'm looking at the community. I'm looking at the game
Right.
itself, the gameplay, the mechanics. So it's not that I want it one way versus another, and they should redo it because I want it redone. It's that this is my comment on what they have done and
Right.
what I would have done differently.
they asked for feedback. This is feedback.
A mining laser upgrade. A curious choice, Miss Calatrix. How will a mining module help our investigation?
Well, now they don't even give you the armor report.
Intercepted a strange signal at one of our mining sites, but we're having trouble locating its source.
Although, once again, they're giving me a mod without actually telling me what that mod does.
Suspect we are.
This would be a great opportunity to explain to people
Look just like another member of the
the relationship between modules and ships.
This would have been a great opportunity to open up the writing for a tutorial as a player contest with rewards.
By accessing
Wow.
the fitting window from
Maybe.
Neocom.
He said under his breath.
But at the same time, it seems pretty obvious to me that they're building up a story. They're going somewhere with all of this that they probably don't want us to be privy to.
I'm just saying, like, players writing the story of EVE Online is a long tradition, and I don't think that opening up the writing of the tutorial as a player contest with rewards would have been that bad an idea.
I think it would have been horrible because I'm becoming
They get to choose.
I'm becoming I don't think that the problem is that experienced players will write something that they believe is like the perfect, and the entire circle jerk is going to think that it's great, and it's going to be awful when it comes to actually helping people.
Most of them will do exactly what you said. However, some of them are capable of shifting gears and simultaneously occupying the space of someone who knows the answers and someone who knows the questions.
Right, but they think that it's true. Like, there's no they
Only
do.
A few will actually do that well. Most players will end
Right.
up just
But the
over-talking or
feedback
teaching
will
the wrong things.
the feedback. There's only one that's going to get selected, so the feedback would point to teaching people from an experienced player's perspective. I don't know. I don't like the idea of players writing the MPE, to be honest. I'm increasingly of the opinion that we should get away from relying on players teaching players, because not only is that unreliable, but in fact, we are increasingly I'm increasingly finding that that actually leads to bad advice.
I agree with you on all points. The problem is CCP has not stepped in and is not seeming to.
Well, I mean, I see this as a step in the right direction in that regard. Like, I'll continue to push CCP to make EVE into a learnable game.
The complexity of this rewiring can be
It's
measured.
so I agree with you, but there's no reason that CCP can't use player input
Yeah.
to create that content.
Yeah, and I think that they do to a certain extent.
You can train skills while doing other things. It's a good
But, like,
strategy to always have
I guess the reason why I was responding to your stuff was, or what you said, was because I interpreted that as players know how to explain all of this better than the developers do, which is a common sentiment, and I think is a wrong one.
Not players. I think that there exists a player. Right?
That's fair.
Well, that does it better, and let's find that player, because the player base is larger than the employee base. Like, it's just that simple.
Right.
Well done, Captain. You can now close the
But
fitting window.
also, the devs can be communicating with players if they identify people that know what they're talking about.
Yes, we like to call them the Council of Stellar Management.
No, those are the people that are voted into because they quote unquote know what they're talking
No,
about.
I know.
But I mean, like,
there are a number of. So there's the partner program, there's the CSM, there's
Well-
personal individual relationships. CCP devs do reach out quite a bit. and get feedback from the players. They spend a lot of time on that. It's true.
I've been reached out by like probably half a dozen developers after my first videos on the MPE came out. Like, they are aggressive. I've never had a reaction like that to anything. Like, I've had usually one dev maybe respond to something, but they're clearly open to communicating with people if they feel like that person has information that would be valuable to them.
Signal air discovered at the mining site. According to my calculations, the probability that the situation is unrelated
I mean,
to the
here's
attack
the
on
truth.
facility is exceptionally small.
Outside
1 in
of the
37 to
NPE
be exact.
itself,
Let us
EVE Online
pause
is
and
underfunded,
walk to the site
in my
immediately.
opinion. So developers are essentially compelled to seek out assistance from the player base, and it is difficult, but they still do it. And they get good info if they find the right players, but they're also very wary because everyone has an opinion and most of them are bad.
Right. Well, so again, back to what I was saying earlier, even a bad opinion is still useful because a bad
Right.
opinion is still their valid perspective and something brought them to that opinion.
This is true, but like if you're Fozzie or whatever, and like you have very limited time on your hands, like you want the conversations you have to be quality
Sure.
conversations, right?
Right. Also,
So, like,
the
you can draw something from a complaint, even you could draw something even from an angry complaint that is not quote unquote constructive. You can draw something from it, but like that's not the type of engagement that you're looking for.
hold on. I want to see what this guy looks like without eyes. I mean, without crazy eyes. I mean, he's all right. I think I like him better with the eyes.
I'm
So-
glad they fixed it. It was disturbing. But you see what I'm saying? Like,
Well, I think
they
that
can't-
more.
they can't just talk. He doesn't have unlimited time.
I didn't have to click
hear
next
all
that
the
time.
benefits.
It said next, and I didn't click it. I'm 90% sure I didn't click it, and it just moved on. So they managed to get that working in the second part. It's not doing it right now, though. Maybe I was just wrong. Maybe I clicked and I didn't even think about it. All right. Either way, I think that the better way of thinking. Shoot, bring up your point because I had a different way of looking at it.
Yes, bad opinions and angry,
Ah.
salty responses are, can be. You can derive some sort of value from it, but that's
Right.
not the sort of interaction that he's looking for.
I think that it's more to the point that you don't need to seek out bad or negative feedback. That players are more than happy to bring and make available negative feedback. That it is the positive feedback that you need to be more aggressive about finding, because, or at least the semi-positive you want the feedback of people that like it, but like there's a little like burrs here and there. The person that wants to, if there's truly something negative that has a solid argument behind it, it's going to be on Reddit. So all you have to do is pay attention to Reddit and you're solved for that side. But people aren't going to create a long diatribe about like this MPE, for example. Most people won't, from without having a complaint perspective tied into it, because that's what motivates people to make such a thing.
There aren't going to be any wildly positive or mildly lukewarm diatribes.
Right, exactly.
There's only going to be the salty ones.
Exactly. The same kind of person.
Yeah. So chat wasn't getting what you were saying. I felt like I had to finish it for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I have seen Reddit. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
you don't.
That's why I had to say like.
You don't have to. Hold on.
Yeah.
You don't have to petition for bad or for negative feedback. The player base will bring it to you. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. There will be no middling stuff on Reddit. If it made it to Reddit, it's loud already.
I still think that minus symbol at the bottom is too hard to find. I wonder if they could track a metric to see how long it takes for a player to find that
Was it
minus.
blinking like that? Because it was blinking.
Right, but I'm looking up. It's like I'm looking all around at the top. I'm looking at the rock. I'm looking at my lock targets. I'm looking everywhere
So
but there.
I recently moved my HUD to the top of the screen.
Sure,
because
but
it's a heads-up display.
I agree, and I have too. But we're talking about a new player, so just from the perspective.
I know. I'm just commenting.
And it's
on,
caught
like,
me both
maybe,
times.
do you think it ought to be? Do you think they should change that? This should be on the top by default.
No, I mean I don't necessarily one way or another, but I think that there should be like flashing arrows that point down towards the HUD to let you to draw your eyes that direction. In the same way that this, in the same way that this banner right here, which I'm like this thing right here, is helping me find the Nephirite. I think that minus symbol in particular needs to have something that helps point to it.
Stick close. This asteroid field can be a bitch to navigate.
Also, positive feedback is often less useful. Like, I appreciate everyone who reinforces what they like about, or that they like my stuff and giving me, support and all that stuff. But it is very frequently that, I'll show something to somebody and be like, what do you think? And I just get back like, that's great. And the problem is that isn't the feedback I was looking for, like that's a non-answer to me. I'm looking for the things that I missed.
Looks like you're a natural at this.
At that point.
Keep it up
And so giving feedback that just simply says I like it is fine, but
Oh man, where to start?
really it boils down to having, hold on.
Difference between raw
Oh yeah, we talked about this last time. I like this explanation.
What we're doing right now is mining ore in its raw state. For someone just learning the ropes, selling that ore is the quickest way to make ISK. But you can also reprocess ore into minerals. Take tritanium, for example.
I can't find the
You can't
Dramiel.
find that stuff in the wild. You've got to get your hands on some raw ore like feldspar and then refine it into tritanium. You can sell those minerals or use them to build your own ships or equipment. You can find refineries at most stations. Experienced miners get way more efficient yields from their ore. So that's something you can work towards.
Right. You can guide them to different feedback. But
The signal strength is increasing. I've isolated the direction of the signal source.
We better close in on that rock.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. The best feedback that you can possibly give as a player is simply describing what emotional experience that you had and what you believe caused that emotional experience. That's it. That is the best feedback you can possibly give, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you're trying to give player experience feedback, that is the player experience. Just like, try to be honest with yourself about it is the only advice I have there. But yeah.
Right. The problem is that very often players will chew on it for a while and like look at the problem and then come up with the solution. But from that, the problem with that is that entire process is being done from the trenches, as it were, from the player perspective. Not seeing the forest for the trees.
Don't try to diagnose. Just tell me where it hurts.
Right. But more importantly, like, so the problem with that is that
Let's stop the ship here.
the player has evaluated how they feel. They don't like it. They evaluate what would make it better for them, and then they say that. So they've actually interpreted their own experience and come up with a solution for it already. The reason why that's a problem is because now the developer needs to reverse engineer that interpretation to try to figure out what it is that you are quote unquote truly saying.
Yes. I too have decades of customer service experience.
Right. And that can cause misunderstandings, right? If they feel like there's a different priority there than what there really is, very often people will be keyed in on a specific thing because it's like the aggravator that's in front of you, but really the problem is deeper than that.
Honestly, being good at customer service is like being a good therapist.
This isn't about bad CCP. This is how all game design, like every good game design company or game company seeks feedback this way. But polls are only so good because any one method of feedback has its own form of bias. Spicy whipped cream, thank you for joining us. Because however you're getting your feedback, you're only getting the feedback from the people that are willing to participate in that method of feedback.
Like, so if you distill down the process that like the game developer, this archetypical game developer is trying to get to, it's like they build something, players play it, and then the developer asks the player, how does this make you feel? And then they get a straight, direct answer of, this is how it made me feel. And then the developer can go and build more based on that. And anything that is beyond that is kind of getting in the way, I think, to a degree.
Or, to put it a slightly different way, like, rather than saying this you should make the PvE shorter, you should say, by this point, I was bored.
Right, that's the difference.
Right. Because you as a player can't speak for the game. And I think that players should probably stop thinking that we can. Like, you can only speak for yourself and your own experience.
Well, you can try to speak for the game. You just have to like recognize when you're doing that and separate that out from like, this is my feedback as player experience, and if I were a game designer, this is what I would do. And as long as you label those separately, then that's fine.
Right. The real problem is when people... I see it very often where players, like, if your position assumes that CCP don't know their own game, it is incredibly possible that you don't understand their design goals. I'll put it that way.
We're upsetting someone, Ash.
I'm good at that. No, I'm not. Hold on. I'm not blaming the player base for giving incorrect feedback. This isn't a matter of blame. I'm not interested in blame. I'm interested in helping everybody communicate better, right? I'm interested in getting the best game that we possibly can. And that is, like, both sides bring their own thing to the table. CCP absolutely need to, respond to the feedback that they're given that does match with the design goals. And I think that they have demonstrated that they are. It would be better if you just knew how to give better feedback. Absolutely. I am absolutely saying that. I have been a beta tester. I've been a beta tester and a software developer for years. I'm telling you that the average population doesn't give good feedback. And if you think about it a different way, then you can be more effective in your feedback. I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm telling you how to properly process what's happening, so that way you can actually officiate real change and we can all get the best game that we can.
The problem is there's a false dichotomy being presented. And it's, yes, the feedback can be better, but that doesn't mean that there is no blame on the developer for whatever they've done wrong. Like,
and let me be clear,
I'm not has done wrong all day.
Hold on, I'm not blaming my customers. I'm a customer. I'm not CCP. I'm telling the community that if they want to get their points across, and all I'm really saying is that I see it over and over again that players present an argument, and as part of their argument, it's that CCP doesn't understand, and therefore they need to change CCP's feelings about not just the implementation of something, but the core design of that thing. And the problem is that often those players are just wrong. And if that's true, then the entire chain of their feedback can be completely worthless because it's predicated on a false assumption, or more importantly, CCP will see it, believe it's predicated on a false assumption, and then think that it's fine and discount it because of it, right? Like the example was with the NFT thing. If we complain about the fact that NFTs are bad for the environment, then if and have that be
So,
one of
yeah,
our
the
arguments.
The false dichotomy was mentioned again. We don't need to treat CCP with silk gloves and not try to upset them. That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
We will talk about CCP's mistakes all day long, but we, the people here in this chat, are players, and we have to figure out how we can also do better to make our game better.
I'm talking to players right now. Trust me, I have definitely given my thoughts and opinions, not just on the game, but also how to properly, you know, process feedback and all that kind of stuff, or like more of a high level advice to various people, even in CCP before, like, you know, whatever. But just so I can finish this, because I brought up the bad word, the reason why I was saying that is like, so with NFTs, if one of the arguments that you're bringing up, if the primary one is that it's so unhealthy for the environment, and let's say CCP is trying to, you know, is working on a project to introduce NFTs, we say that they shouldn't because it's bad for the environment. But they've already taken that into consideration, and so they have a plan for a version of NFT that isn't as bad for the environment. So now they actually write off your argument because they think that they've already solved the problem that you have. That's the real issue about like that kind of specificity, is because it can be when a dev is interpreting feedback, they might interpret your feedback as confirmation that whatever it is that they're trying to do is working, or they may believe that they already have compensation for that feedback. So I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying higher quality communication, higher quality feedback gets more things done. And this is a position I've always had. It's signal to noise. I call out CCP all the time about the tutorial. In fact, I started the first half of this about blaming CCP that it should be a learnable game. And ultimately, the whole thing about like players shouldn't be teaching players isn't an argument against the players. It's saying, hey, CCP, stop relying on players to compensate for your lack of ability to create a good, well-designed game that teaches people how to play it through gameplay. Put in the work to actually make the game fun. Like, player interaction is a big part of it, and it will always be, but it should not be necessary to be fun. That's the key.
Now, let's switch over to the item hanger.
I don't think there's anything wrong with suggesting that, like, if you want results as a player, this is how to engage with the developer to get the results you desire.
Right.
Like, that's just good advice.
Yeah, all I was...
Like, there's no value judgment, there's no morality, there's no blame or anything. It's just like, this is what we want. This is how we can get it. On another unrelated front, we can also talk about things that CCP does wrong, ways that they can improve. But these are unrelated issues. Learning how to be a good tester and how to give good feedback is just like a good life skill.
Right. And that's what I was saying. Like, I have a lot of experience as a beta tester, and, you know, I've refined that process for a while. So I was giving advice as a person who has communicated with a lot of developers about a lot of different games and a lot of different things, and as a developer who has taken feedback about a lot of different things. Like, knowing how to make, yeah, exactly what Fansui just said. Knowing how to give effective feedback is a skill.
You can view the total balance of S.
Yeah, that's a critical communication skill, like in any relationship.
And it takes a lot of self-awareness too.
Your recent market transactions will show you how
Uh-oh, now we're white knights.
I can't believe I can go on that rant and then I'm being called a white knight. That's hilarious.
I know, right? It's incredible. It sounds like someone made up their minds before they started talking.
All right. I like how they're okay. So speaking of feedback, all right. I have now. How many times in this MPE have I said take a few seconds to like clarify things? At least 2 or 3 times, and yet we're like walking our way through the wallet. Like, this much energy needs to be put into the fitting window, needs to be put into the concept of modules, right?
Did they do that for overview? Because it needs it.
Well, no, but they did make you flip tabs and stuff. But and
Okay.
like an overview thing would be nice too. But my point is that like this is an example of like, yeah, they're willing to drill in if they're like, look at this. We just spent 30 seconds to a minute learning about the wallet, and yet, you know what the fitting window got? Please review these stats and click on one of them. All right, move on. Like that was it.
Captain,
I guess it's like
keep quiet about
maybe
the
they felt like the
discussion.
fitting window was an all or nothing
long
sort
as
of
you
deal.
respond
Because like it's
to
dense.
real
Like that
ones,
obviously like ship
yeah,
fitting is a
on
whole,
your
you know, thing in and of itself. So
I
maybe
th-
they didn't necessarily want to dip into that just yet.
I think that they could explain some of the basic concepts of the fitting window, like pull them out, real quick to help like make it intelligible, right? Like you know, offensive and how to interpret that. The fact that the defenses are your different skills, and you could. There's no mention of resistances. That's kind of a pretty key, mechanic in the game that could be introduced under the defense section. Targeting shows how many locked targets you have. This is a concept that a lot of new players just simply do not understand. It would be a really good time to touch on that. Navigation, all of these, all four of these stats mean nothing to a new player and should probably be like explained at least at some point, some sort of like briefing about it. And then of course drones you're probably not going to be able to touch on. But ironically,
I would say almost all this means nothing to a new player. Yeah.
well, a new player can look at this and see offense, DPS. I get it, right? Like you can, and if you hover over
Right.
it, like this offense, I think makes sense. I can figure that out without any problem. The problem with the defense is that like this is different. The resistances, like, and how to make it like this isn't actually confusing. This is just overwhelming. And so just introducing the entire block and the basic concept of tanking and then skipping
what you
past
just
would be
did there, how
fine.
you clicked the active what's it called? The active
Yes.
repair icon, and it becomes the drop down. Like there's no indication that that's a drop down. And a new player would never know to click that.
Well, there isn't no indication. There's this arrow
No, where
pointing up.
that oh
I'm not
wow,
even joking.
That's
No, I'm not saying that you're like. I'm only pointing out that you're wrong because it's actually dumber than what you said. Like there is an
Yeah.
indicator, but this is the weirdest
Right,
indicator
but it's
ever.
bad.
An arrow that points up and then points down. That makes no fucking sense. Especially since there's so much room here. You could just push it over a few pixels and make the arrow go here, like in every other place in the UI.
Yeah, I don't get it, man. That's definitely bad. Maybe it's supposed to be next to it and it's a bug. Who knows?
But why is it pointing up?
Use this time to explore what New Eden has to offer.
I don't know. But yeah, like just these little things, right?
Yeah.
Best words to find.
Also, so you just spent all of that time going over everything with the wallet, and the agency gets, hey, you should open up the agency.
Miss Calatrix is right, Captain.
How about there's help videos if you're interested? Can we, there's follow-up videos that, from Eve Academy
Capsuleer.
available in the help section.
If mining tickled your fancy, as the saying
So they're going to introduce resource harvesting. That's fine. That's good.
as you can see,
Agents and missions. Good.
Maya spoke highly of your
But now you're sending me to career
I
agents.
suggest you take
I-
a moment to familiarize yourself with what each
You should not be leaving the MPE without pointing out the help tab. Otherwise, you have put a lot of work into having those videos in the game for no for no good reason. You're not getting any of the value out of it.
developments in the investigation.
Our investigation is still in the early stages.
This is, I mean, like
Two theories.
the bottom line is that a lot of
Motivated by simple
the snags that we had last time are fixed. Like there's been a lot of polish
groundbreaking
to this MPE from the last time we looked at it.
A more worrying possibility is that someone is trying to stop us from pursuing our research. While Air takes pride in disrupting the corporate
Much appreciated, Miss Calatrix. I await any and all updates with bated breath. Metaphorically speaking, of course. I don't breathe. Captain, when you're ready, we can undock and begin the next phase of our journey. I do wonder how you'll die next. I suppose that is what ancient philosophers called morbid curiosity.
I've said it before, but what the MPE really needs is a foil, right? Like everybody's being so positive There needs to be like a curmudgeonly conservative Amarian that is like grumbling about things and like pessimistic about it to be a counterweight and to introduce a little bit of the nihilism and dystopia of Eve into the MPE, I would say, or into this story, I guess. Because that's the thing, is that this isn't just the MPE. This is building a foundation of a new kind of way of delivering PvE, or a new paradigm of PvE. First, he spends long time preaching about how not to give solutions, and said, "I am sad at this moment."
The primary mode of interstellar travel through New Eden is via stargates.
Fair.
Stargates are also called jump gates. After that route,
That being said, that feedback I'm not giving as a player. That feedback I'm giving as a UI designer.
this is New Eden. Peril often approaches when you least expect it.
But you're absolutely correct.
I did.
No,
but I
but
said
if you
I
notice,
said, like 20 minutes ago, if you flag this as a player, I like this, that, and the other, and I want this, that, and this was my experiencing this UI design, this content, this whatever, and then you can put on your other hat and say, were I a game designer, I would change this, and that's valid as long as you separate those two.
and if you notice, I could go back to the VOD and check, but like I'm pretty sure I say a lot like what it is that's causing. First, I will outright say what it is that I'm having a problem with, and then I might speculate on it. So what I talked about was that this was confusing, and it was, we get past it without knowing anything about it. So I focused on the experience that I have and the experience that I've heard other people have. That's the primary of my focus. And then as I'm talking about it, we notice little ways that could potentially be causes of that problem, right? Now, this solution is just a solution, but we only talked about it because it stands out as being a quote unquote obvious one. But ultimately, the real valuable feedback that I gave was the experience of, of being confused by this, and the need and the request for them to go more into it.
Be reborn into a new clone body to try again.
Everything else was just
This is
a
what
pitch.
humans call optimism.
I wish the old UI was an option. Which part?
It's very in your face. It's very big.
No, but
right?
like which old is this a old Neocom icon kind of thing, or like what?
No, like the window that comes up, the dialogue for skills, like Alt X.
Oh, I think that
it's way different now, and it's like bulky and flashy, and like it would be nice if I could slim it down like a whole lot.
I agree that it's probably a little much, but at the same time, I also think that there's a big piece of this, because this is true about the map too. These windows that open up in full screen, I strongly believe should just be opened as a window, because the user doesn't know how or even that they can make it not full screen.
Yeah, even though it's as simple as grabbing the title bar. You can literally grab the title bar with the mouse and move it. You don't even have to click a button and it becomes a window. But even that, people just don't do.
Right. I didn't know that. Fair enough. Can you do that with the map?
Yeah, you can do it with the map.
That's cool. Well, that's going to make giving the advice a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, like the bottom line is that nobody does, or like not nobody, but people don't do that because they don't think to even do it.
Right. So the new skill UI, they added functionality, which is good, but they also made it enormous, which is bad.
Yeah.
It's so bulky and weird.
You must first access the agency.
You know what the new skill UI is? Don't take this as a conspiracy or anything like that, because it's not. I'm not trying to suggest anything about where they're going or anything like this. But this UI, for the skill UI, looks like it was developed by somebody building for a tablet.
Right. Yeah. It has that feel. A lot of the new UI stuff has that feel.
Big buttons, stylized pictures, clicking on, selection. Yeah. It feels like
Well, that's been like
a UI for a tablet.
Well
I mean,
remembered,
that's
Captain.
that's been a style for a while now. That's not
Now,
new.
don't be shy.
But yes,
Begin
it's
conversation
definitely
with
it
an
has
agent.
that kind of feel to
Your
it.
choice of career agent
Yeah.
will not limit you in any way. You can choose to work with multiple agents, but let's focus on just one for now.
You know what I find hilarious though about this though,
I'm sure will be an illustrious career.
based on my
Accept a mission.
based on just my experience with the history of Eve. What's funny about this is that the primary complaint that I've heard about why it looks so bulky is because it's side by side, right? Would you agree with that, Fonsui?
I don't know, maybe.
Wait, they didn't actually tell me to, or get me to put something in my skill queue. That's funny. But like, the skill queue's over here when all of the skills are over here. And therefore the height is based on the height of both panels. So this panel, the upper left panel, is really tall compared to what it was before. Actually, honestly, this could just be crushed down a little bit.
Yeah,
or at least have a
the-
minimized mode.
That section with the categories takes up a lot more space than it used to. Because
Yes.
you used to be able to shrink that down like a lot.
Right. And the problem is that it crushes down the actual skills themselves, which is kind of funny. But what's funny is that I hear people complain about the fact that it's side by side and therefore takes up more room. But the original skill queue was side by side. And when they put it on top of each other, people were so upset. Like it's hilarious. Like, and this is back to that feedback thing, because I'm concerned that when people talk about the skill UI, especially if they talk about it in very generic terms, like just say that it's ugly or it's too big or it's bulky, CCP could have written off that feedback is just because change is bad, because it, they can correspond it to their previous feedback from the last change and just be like, whatever, that's the kind of feedback that we should probably just ignore. And that's not good. So it'd be good to be able to drill past that and look at more specifics. Like I said, like I feel what's really happening, what I'm experiencing right now is that by having this be so big and this be so small, I feel claustrophobic, because this section is the part that I actually care about, right? This is the part I'm looking at. This is the part I'm thinking about. This just allows me to select the category, right? So I have to find it in a list here, and these lists are long. So I feel like I've got this big thing like covering up half of my space, and I have this little tiny workspace for this big old window. I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why people feel like it's bulky. I feel claustrophobia. See? There you go.
Yeah, no, that's entirely accurate. I don't have need for the categories because I know the skill I'm looking for and I type its name in the search box. So I want the categories to take up no space.
Jita, I also, just for the record, strongly agree that there should absolutely, like, okay, I'll just go. We'll take a step and say what should be done. What needs to happen here is that there needs to be another selector to control this skill area. It needs to be able to switch it into a compact mode, and it needs to be able to swap between sorting by different priorities, because I don't know what their priorities are for how they manage to decide what order to put these categories. But if you told me it was a random number generator, I would have believed you. Like, I don't know. Is it? Is it really alphabetical? Okay, never mind. It used to be not alphabetical. Now it is. Okay, never mind.
It's
Never mind.
alphabetical in columns.
Never mind. I'm dumb. I was working on old information. I didn't double check, even though it's right here in front of me. It's fucking alphabetical. Well, the good news is, so like any other logical way of organizing it besides alphabetical, runs into the problem that the user has to have the exact same logic as the person who made the order, unless there are like I said, unless there's a selection window to be allow you to sort it in different ways. But a compact mode is like this is not great. The old logic was perfect, except for the old logic was literally what I was just complaining about. But yeah, or allow people to use it. Yeah, that is a lot more work. If they want to go down that road, sure. No, I don't know if I even necessarily mind the order. I just, you know what I feel? I feel like there's too much space that's being consumed here for the amount of information that's given. Like if you are going to have these giant sections, like why isn't the int perception, like why aren't there a little more information about these categories? If you're going to have this much space dedicated to all the categories, have there be more valuable information in here.
Yeah, if it had the two icons for the primary attribute, the primary and secondary attribute, like right on there, that would be useful. That would be like, okay, I'm glad that that's in my face.
You actually don't even need the icon. You can, because each attribute is also associated with a color. Yeah. So they could just double down on that association.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if they use the space for that.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I absolutely feel like there should be compact mode. There's the issue though, yeah, because the issue is that this height versus this height, but I would say that there needs to be, the issue isn't that it needs to be smaller, although some people might agree that that's true. But this bottom part needs to be the bigger priority, and it just isn't. Anywho. There are so many feels, it's like being in couples therapy. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is what I was talking about earlier, is that, like, when I give feedback, what I try to do is I give my gut reaction.
Yeah, that's good feedback.
I give my gut reaction, but then I dig into my gut reaction. I investigate it internally and try to pull it. Like I said, I felt this was too bulky, but it took me a little while to think about it and feel the feeling of claustrophobia that I was having. Like, I knew that I didn't like it, but it took me a little bit to really be able to articulate what about it was causing that discomfort. I also think that the tracked skill plans, I feel like they are really trying to make this whole milestone thing work. And I don't know how much adoption is being done to it, but I feel like I feel like this isn't quite dialed in yet either. And this is also taking up a lot of space for not a lot of information. In fact, I would argue that this, especially since you're only going to have the 5 things, this giant wheel for it, I think it's a lot of space to convey not a lot of information. What if it worked like the fitting screen? So you have to tank headings under armor and shields? I mean, you could. You know what? Actually, no. I just realized that the other solution is simple. It's the same as they've done like pretty much everywhere else. There should be arrows that allow you to collapse the top and the top section completely.